There was a time when the world moved at the speed of a human voice. Ideas did not fly, they walked, slowly. They crossed borders on tired feet, survived only in fragile memories, and often died with the people who carried them. In that world, truth was rare, not because it didn't exist, but because it could not spread. If you lived in a small village in medieval Europe, the universe ended where your eyesight did. You knew what your parents told you. You believed what your priest said. You accepted what your ruler declared, not because they were always right, but because there was no other version available. History, science, religion, and law were not shared, they were guarded. And then, quietly, without armies or explosions, something happened. An invention appeared that did not conquer land, it conquered time. An invention that did not kill people, it killed ignorance. An invention so powerful that kings tried to ban it, churches feared it, and governments learned, too late, that once it existed, the world would never again be controllable in the same way. This is the story of the first great accelerator of human civilization. This is the story of the printing press. Before we understand how it changed the world, we must understand the prison humanity lived in before it existed. For thousands of years, knowledge was handmade. Every book was written by hand, every page copied letter by letter, every mistake permanent, every correction dangerous. In ancient Rome, scribes worked under candlelight, copying legal texts, poetry, and philosophy onto papyrus and parchment. It could take months to copy a single book. A large library represented decades, sometimes centuries of human labor. And when Rome fell, much of that knowledge fell with it. During the early Middle Ages, books became rarer than gold. In Europe, most people would live their entire lives without ever touching a written page. Literacy was not a skill, it was a privilege reserved for monks, nobles, and a tiny educated elite. In monasteries, scribes sat in silence, bent over desks, copying religious texts word by word. Their job was sacred, their mistakes were sins, their pace was painfully slow. A single Bible could take years to produce, years. And because books were so rare, whoever owned them controlled truth itself. If a king wanted history written a certain way, it was written that way. If a church wanted doctrine preserved, it was preserved and nothing else. If an idea was dangerous, it could simply be erased by refusing to copy it. Knowledge did not evolve, it ossified. The world waited centuries for progress, not because humans lacked intelligence, but because ideas could not multiply. Then came a man who did not look like a revolutionary. Johannes Gutenberg was not a general. He was not a philosopher. He wasn't even particularly successful for most of his life. He was a metal worker. Born around 1400 in Mainz, Germany, Gutenberg lived in a Europe on the edge of transformation. Trade was growing, cities were expanding, a merchant class was emerging, people who needed contracts, records, manuals, and education. The demand for information was increasing, but supply was trapped in the medieval past. Gutenberg noticed something others ignored. The problem was not writing, it was repetition. If letters could be reused instead of rewritten, if pages could be replicated instead of recreated, knowledge could escape its cage. His idea was deceptively simple: movable type. Instead of carving entire pages from wood, Gutenberg developed individual metal letters that could be arranged, inked, pressed onto paper, then rearranged again. It was not just a machine, it was a system. Metal alloys precise enough to endure pressure. Oil-based ink that stuck to metal instead of soaking into paper. A press adapted from winemaking technology. Standardized fonts. Mass production logic centuries ahead of its time. This was engineering married to imagination.
Around 1455, Gutenberg completed what would become one of the most influential objects in human history, the Gutenberg Bible. It was beautiful, it was accurate, and most importantly, it was repeatable. About 180 copies were produced. That number might sound small today, but in a world where one book once took years to create, it was nothing short of miraculous. For the first time, identical information could appear in multiple places at the same time. Truth was no longer singular, and that terrified those in power. Within decades, printing presses spread across Europe, Italy, France, England, the Netherlands. Books became cheaper, literacy began to rise, ideas moved faster than governments could track. Then came a monk with a hammer. In 1517, Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to a church door, criticizing the Catholic Church. Before the printing press, this act would have ended quietly. Instead, his words were printed, copied, distributed, translated. Within weeks, his ideas spread across Germany, within months across Europe. The Protestant Reformation exploded, not because of Luther alone, but because printing made suppression impossible. This was the first information revolution. Wars followed, empires fractured, authority weakened, individual interpretation strengthened. The printing press did not just challenge religion, it reshaped politics. Governments learned that laws could be published. Citizens learned they could read them. Contracts, constitutions, and rights became written promises instead of spoken ones. In England, printed pamphlets fueled political debate. In France, books questioned monarchy. In the American colonies centuries later, printing presses would ignite something even bigger. By the time of the American Revolution, printing was not a luxury, it was a weapon. Thomas Paine's Common Sense sold over 100,000 copies in a population of only a few million. It convinced ordinary colonists, farmers, workers, merchants that independence was not just possible, but necessary. Without the printing press, there's no Declaration of Independence. Without mass printing, there's no Constitution. Without printed law, there's no modern democracy. The United States itself was born from ink and paper. Education transformed. Textbooks standardized learning. Science accelerated because discoveries could be shared, tested, corrected, and improved. Newton read Galileo. Einstein read Newton. Progress became cumulative. For the first time in history, humanity did not start over every generation. It built upward. The printing press also created something unexpected: public opinion. Newspapers emerged, so did propaganda, so did misinformation. The same machine that spread enlightenment also spread lies. But there was no going back. Once information escaped confinement, control became negotiation rather than command. Today, when you scroll through a screen, when ideas cross continents in seconds, you are not living in a digital age alone. You are living in the long shadow of Gutenberg's press. The internet did not begin this revolution, it accelerated it. And this pattern, an invention that amplifies human capability faster than society can adapt, will repeat again and again. In the next chapter, we will witness a machine that did not spread ideas, but power. A machine that turned heat into motion, motion into industry, and industry into a world that would never sleep again. Before electricity, before engines, before modern America, the world learned how to make fire work for us, and everything changed.